Alright, Sunday, crunch time. Going out on track, just under an hour. I'm driving, and I should be driving Scout Leader John's Exige S. So I think it's a great car to start off with because, you know, I should be able to get myself out of any trouble that I get into quite easily. It's not got too much engine for the chassis or the brakes, which is just the way I like to keep it, certainly when I'm out on track first time. And there was a little bit of a prank going on yesterday, not aimed at me actually, it was aimed at John, but they've offered to take it off, but I think they should leave it.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, I love it. So I'm keeping that on. Wish me luck. Now, I'll confess I was really nervous at this point. Going out on track on any track day, I always have a little bit of nerves. You know, there's always the worry about what could go wrong, you know, you're going to do okay, all that stuff. I'm never worried about being the fastest thing on a track day because that's a very bad mentality to get into, and I'm never going to be the fastest thing on a track day, so there's really no point worrying about it. My aim on these things is usually just to be not the slowest thing and to try and have fun. Now, I'd only been out on track a couple of times before. The first time, which was yesterday, was with Marshall, who's in the red Exige S up ahead. When I went out with him, the place was basically a river. As you're going to see, the Watkins Glen track is not a very forgiving one. It's an extremely fun one, and I had an absolute blast driving it, and can't thank John enough for not just inviting me out there, but putting me up and letting me take his car out on track. It's a very brave thing to let somebody that you've never actually met before drive your prized car around a pretty unforgiving racetrack, so massive brownie points to him. Give the video a thumbs up for that alone. Now, the corners at the Glen, like most in America, are just numbered, and I really can't remember any of them off the top of my head, bar a couple of them. Now, the idea of going out behind Marshall was for him to basically drag me up to speed. Now, for those of you not familiar with track days, or specifically American track days, in this session I was in, I think, the blue wristband session, which basically meant solo drivers. So there were sessions for people that only had instructors, and those are usually the sort of novice and starter guys. And there were several sessions for the solo drivers who are a bit more advanced. I was in the bottom of the solo driver sessions, which worked absolutely fine for me. Now, the track surface was absolutely excellent and really grippy. This is actually the first time I'd driven an Exige S2 in pretty much any anger, really. In fact, the first time I'd ever driven one was only about 4 or 5 days earlier when I was in Connecticut, and I had a literal quick drive around the block in my hosts there. Now, I was trying to let the other traffic get past me so that they could kind of basically enjoy their own track day, but after a few laps I started to kind of get in a groove with the car, find the grip levels, and basically get a feel for the circuit. So what we're going to do now is skip from my first session to my last session. So we're now going at a much better rate. I know the track to some extent, and I've got a little bit of clear space ahead of me. This first turn is great. Now, the one thing that you can't do in the Exige that you can do in some of the larger and particularly the front engine cars like the Viper that I got a passenger ride in is really lean on the brakes. Now, it's really at turn 1 where that affects you the most because you are traveling at the highest speed you pretty much reach on circuit, and you're braking pretty heavily. Because the Exige has so little weight over the front end, it just doesn't have that ability to just stop on a sixpence like you'd like it to. Now, in these sessions, and in all sessions, you have to wait for a point by from another driver to basically let you go past. And in these sessions, you can only do so on a straight. In the more advanced sessions, you can basically go past anywhere because they know that all the drivers are going to have a slightly higher skill level and aren't going to get themselves into trouble by overtaking on a bend. Now this series of bends we're coming up to here is a real great one with the Lotus, and you can take it in a way, I was told, like you can't in a lot of other cars. Because the car has so much grip in the corner and so little weight, you can basically hug the inside of this corner and basically stay right tight into the apex until you're at the end. And this sets you up pretty well for the next corner. We had a great variety of cars out on track. You can see there I'm following a Cayman. We got, of course, loads of 911s, there's a few 944s, the odd Corvette, all sorts of stuff out there. And if you're a Porsche fanatic, well, get on one of their days and come along, even if you're not driving or passengering. And passengering, by the way, unlike UK track days, you basically cannot passenger on these days. You can only do so if you're with an instructor, and it's for the purposes of showing you around the track, which is how I more or less got away with it, because I was there to learn the track, so it was valuable time for me to go out with other instructors, seeing how the track was laid out. You can see here I'm following a fairly modified BMW. There you go, people pointing me past. So it was really nice going from the first session of the day where I was letting pretty much everyone past, and I then realised that I should probably stop doing that if I wanted to learn the track myself, to then getting the point by quite frequently myself. So now I'm going to start another lap. Coming round, you got the pits, of course, on the right there where you pull off, and they've got the sort of NASCAR style pit road as well, where you can stop, which is not a very familiar sight on UK tracks. Of course, we would normally have the garages all lined up there. So you dip into this track, and if you just look off just to the right center of the screen, you can actually see really far, and it's a beautiful view. But when you're whipping around this track, you do not get that much time to admire it. When it's dry, you can take a fair bit of that curb on the left, but when it's wet, avoid it. Now, I was told that you can take these S's, which are pretty much infamous, flat in this car, but I never quite got there. I got as close as I just lifted off. You can see that the car was pulling quite a bit of distance between the cars in front through that section. I was really enjoying it. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly how much power this Exige was running, there's a 944 on the left, but it was not running standard power. No way, because this thing pulled hard and the supercharger sounded awesome. This is the bus stop. Now, I sort of bounced through here on a couple of occasions, and I was always trying a slightly different line, but as long as you're careful and you've not got too much lock, you can kind of bounce over those curbs quite nicely. This section I never quite got right. I was never perfectly happy with my line here, but, you know, I could get through it. Now, you can see here, look at the sides, how little room and runoff there is between the edge of the circuit and the barrier. This is probably one of the better sections, at least if you hit that stuff on the right, that's a bit softer. But all this stuff here, you hit that, you're having a bad time, and a few people on the day did unfortunately encounter it. This section's a lot steeper than it looks on camera. Really nice. Again, I keep a tight line here in the Lotus, and you push out. This section's quite fun. They got the catch fencing up on the side, looks quite cool. Then you got another right-hander coming up, and then you come to my Nemesis Corner. Now, the corner I really don't like, I believe, is turn 9. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what it is. So it's this corner up here. Now, I've tried taking this early on, much earlier, but you have to really wait before you turn it in, because otherwise, straight ahead there, you wind up getting on the power earlier than you actually should, and you're basically pointed straight at a crash barrier. That's terrifying. You see that section there? You've got literally inches between the edge of the road and the crash barrier, and when it's wet, you get standing water there too. So although you think, okay, it's a straight line, anyone can do that, actually, it'd be very possible to have a very bad old time at that section right there. So you got a GT3 RS by the looks of it, just pulling off at the pits. And we're back on the straightaway again. Now, in terms of speed, I wasn't really paying too much attention. Okay, so you got a 911 Turbo here in red. We had a good old play together. So I let him pass because he was pretty much on my tail more or less the whole time. That's a 996 Turbo for your reference. I actually had a good chat with him afterwards in the pits, and he kind of said, oh, I wish you hadn't let me pass, because basically you were kind of about the same speed, or maybe a bit faster than me. But I was sat there looking at him in my bumper constantly thinking, oh, I wonder if he's that much quicker than me. So I decided to give him the point by, and we had a little bit of a play. So I'll let this lap play out, and you can see how he did. It's really fun, I think, comparing these two cars, because of course the 911 Turbo's got a lot more power. I mean, he's over 400 horsepower. Exactly how much in that car I couldn't tell you, because I didn't know if it was modified or not. My car at best was running probably about 260, but I was also carrying at least 500 kilos less than he was. Or for my American viewers, you're probably talking about an 1,100, 1,200 pound difference in reality. So it's a real kind of David and Goliath type fight, and we clearly each had sections of the circuit where we were better than the others. So I had a really, really good time chasing this guy around, and it was a wonderful way to end my session at the Glen. So coming through here again, and there's a lot of opportunities to get on the throttle early in the Exige. One of the things that I found with it is that it's got so much grip, and because it doesn't have huge amounts of power with the super sticky Toyo R888Rs that it was wearing, I would be getting on the power pretty much at the apex, if not earlier, because it just had that much grip. It was absolutely incredible. Really, really great car to drive. Really, really fun. So I'm going to leave you guys now. I hope you've enjoyed watching this little talk through Watkins Glen. I'm going to give you a couple of clear laps, or maybe one, however many is left, and enjoy. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.